Cory Marie Rubio was born to parents Jimmy and Susan on October 11, 1974. In 1994, Cory was living in Shreveport, Louisiana, married, and had a daughter named Sarah. The marriage wouldn't last, and after they divorced, she met and married Jesse McGay and had another daughter named Samantha. Jesse was a senior airman in the U.S. Air Force, stationed at Barksdale Air Force Base, across the river in Bossier City. Unfortunately, their relationship was very tumultuous, and he was allegedly both physically and mentally abusive to Cory. In the summer of 1998, she filed for divorce and moved in with her parents. She then began making plans to get a mobile home set up for her and the girls. At the time, she was working as a technician at the Schumpert Medical Center, but wanted to go back to school. Sadly, she would never get the chance. Meanwhile, she and Jesse were in the middle of a nasty custody battle over her youngest daughter, Samantha. Jesse had been ordered to pay $430 a month in child support, but wanted the amount reduced. On the night of January 27, 1999, Cory left her parents' home and dropped her daughters off with the babysitter. She told the babysitter she would be back in about 4 hours, but never said where she was going. After a few hours, she called her parents, letting them know she wasn't going to be much longer, and sounded fine on the phone. Sadly, they would never hear from her again. Later on that night, an officer found her white 1994 Ford Probe abandoned at the Stoner boat launch near the base, with both her purse and shoes inside. The next morning, Cory missed a 9:30 hearing at the Bossier Parish Courthouse in Benton, Louisiana. When an officer called to notify her parents that they found her abandoned car, they assumed she was at home until they looked outside and noticed her car was missing. They also discovered that she never picked the girls up from the babysitter. At that point, they reported her missing. When investigators began looking into her disappearance, they started with her soon-to-be ex, Jesse, and requested security records from the Air Force Base. Those records indicated that Cory arrived on base on the evening she went missing, but since outgoing visitors are not logged, it's unclear if she ever left. It's believed she went to the base to discuss the custody hearing with Jesse that was scheduled for the following morning. A massive search for Cory began, and authorities focused heavily on the Stoner boat ramp and the Red River. Both were searched by helicopter, boat, and divers, but nothing was found. Days would turn into years without answers for her family. Meanwhile, not long after she disappeared, Jesse was transferred to Osan Air Force Base in Korea. While there, the suspicions toward Jesse only grew after his new girlfriend claimed he had almost choked her to death. She said he even told her, and I quote, "Be careful or I'll bury you like I did my ex-wife." However, Jesse denied ever saying this. He also allegedly dropped hints to a few friends of his. After a short time in Korea, he fled back to the States and was officially declared AWOL. He left a note behind that said he was tired of his life and had unfinished business in the States. In November 1999, 10 months after Cory's disappearance, Jesse was apprehended in Dallas, Texas. He was never charged in Jesse's murder and can't be now because he died on June 24, 2013 in Ecuador. However, I was not able to find his cause of death. Right after Cory's disappearance, her parents fought for custody of their grandchildren and won after Jesse failed to show up to the custody trial. He was then ordered to pay them $362 per month in child support. Interestingly, 7 years later, Jesse's own father told reporters that he had almost been choked to death by his son, the same as he had done to Cory and his ex-girlfriend in Korea. A few years ago, an inquiry was made under the Freedom of Information Act to the Barksdale Military Police and to the Office of Special Investigations, but neither of them had records concerning her disappearance. This is strange because she was likely last seen on the base. Also, since she went missing, the building where Jesse was staying has since been torn down and replaced. Plus, before Jesse's death, he had a run-in with the law after committing insurance fraud. As for Cory, she stood 5'2" and had black hair and brown eyes. She may have been wearing a dark green knit sweater, blue jeans, white Reebok shoes, and a diamond bracelet. She disappeared on January 27, 1999, and as of September 2024, she has never been found. Debra Ann Woodson was born on January 26, 1955. In 1986, 31-year-old Debra was a mother of 2 sons living in Pineville, Louisiana at the Pine Highland Apartments and worked at the post office. At the time, she had been separated from her husband of 10 years, Donald Lee Woodson, for about 10 months. Debra was legally deaf and used a hearing aid, while Donald suffered from deaf mutism, requiring the use of sign language. On March 1, 1986, between 3 and 4 p.m., she left with a male friend and was never seen again. When police later questioned him, he said they were only together for about 15 minutes when one of them got sick. He then returned to her apartment and claimed he dropped her off at the mailbox so she could check her mail. However, she never got her mail and never showed up for work that night. 3 days later, Donald went to her apartment and found it locked with the boys alone inside, stranded on the balcony, and called the police. When investigators began looking into her disappearance, they discovered her late model beige 2-door Mercury Lynx still in the parking lot. Inside the apartment, they found the tub full of soapy water and 2 cups left on the kitchen counter. It was almost as if she had been interrupted while taking a bath. About a month after she was last seen, Debra's purse was found hanging on a limb in Flagone Creek near Easler Regional Airport. Inside were her wallet, driver's license, credit cards, and photos of her sons, but no money. Her eyeglasses were also in the purse, and one of the lenses was broken. Sadly, due to Donald's deaf mutism, he was unable to care for his sons, and they were sent to live in an orphanage. The investigation would take a strange turn early on when one of the detectives swore he saw a woman on an episode of Oprah called Runaway Moms who looked exactly like Debra. The episode aired only a few months after Debra went missing. The woman on the episode was named Mary, and the story she told was strikingly similar to Debra's past. However, a news site in Alexandria, Louisiana, called The Town Talk, tried to obtain a copy of the episode, but was unable to without a court order. 14 years after Debra's disappearance, her mother, Beverly Harrell, admitted to having 2 photos from the episode, but declined to share them with a reporter working on an article for the case. It's unclear why she refused to show them. I did look for the episode and was unable to find it. Some believe she might be the Slidell Jane Doe, aka Lake Pontchartrain Jane Doe, who was found 3 months after Debra went missing. However, the biggest difference between Debra and the Slidell Jane Doe is that the Jane Doe had plastic surgery, breast implants, and no mention of an overbite. I personally don't see the resemblance, but let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Debra stood about 5'4" and had blue eyes and brown hair. She was possibly wearing a blue windbreaker with the U.S. Postal Service logo when she disappeared. She had a very noticeable overbite and was legally deaf and wore hearing aids. She disappeared on March 1, 1986, and as of September 2024, she remains missing. Jacqueline Danette Ebel was born on January 2, 1963, and went by Jackie. In 1988, 25-year-old Jackie was living in Long Beach, California, and was sadly using drugs. She also went by a couple of different last names, such as Yonkers and Palmer, but the reason why is unknown. Some believe she did that because she had gotten into trouble with the law and didn't want to be identified. Unfortunately, in 1987, she began hanging around a new circle of friends, and then in December of 1988, she would strangely disappear. On December 23rd, when her family had not heard from her in a few days, they reported her missing. 3 days later, her charred remains were found in a dumpster behind a business in Paris, California, a couple of hours from Los Angeles. It's believed that whoever murdered her placed her body in the dumpster and then set it on fire. At the time, investigators were unable to identify the remains due to the lack of identification. Also, while she bounced between Long Beach and Bellflower, she had no known connections to Riverside County. 34 years later, in 2022, authorities enlisted the help of Othram and their genetic genealogy team, and using DNA extracted from her remains, they were finally able to identify them as belonging to Jackie. Sadly, her mother passed before ever finding out what happened to her daughter. Investigators now want to find her killer and are asking for the public's help and urging anyone with information, no matter how insignificant it may seem, to come forward by contacting the Cold Case Hotline at 951-955-5567. Sadly, there is very little information available on her case, and as of September 2024, it remains unsolved. Lois Jean Rogers was born on October 25, 1939, in Whitesburg, Kentucky, to Elisha and Roxy Rogers, and was their firstborn child and the oldest of 6. In 1957, 18-year-old Lois married Jack Trent, and they went on to have 4 children together: Kimla, Teresa, Gina, and Jack Scott. Unfortunately, the marriage didn't last, and after the divorce, Jack remarried and had other children with his new wife. Lois remained unwed for many years and raised her 4 children as a single mother with no support or financial help from anyone. This was from the 1960s to the 1980s, when single mothers were more uncommon. Their lives were extremely difficult, with no electricity, running water, or sufficient food. They had at least a lot of love because Lois was a dedicated mother who worked hard. On November 26, 1986, Lois married Philip Adams, who went by PW. They remained married until he passed away on July 17, 1987, at the age of 82. Despite their short marriage, Lois often spoke about how wonderful PW was to her and how he was an incredibly kind man. She remained single after PW's death until she and Jack reconciled in 2012. They never remarried, but remained together until his death on November 29, 1921. 13 days later, a horrible tragedy occurred. On December 12, 2021, Lois's son Scott had been trying to reach her all day. He had been texting and calling, but she wasn't answering. He wasn't initially concerned because she had been grieving Jack's death and had made it clear to her family that she just wanted some space. Regardless, he decided to drive to their home, just a couple of miles down the road. He knocked on the door and tried calling her phone, but once again, nothing. He thought maybe she was not at home, but as he was leaving, he glanced inside the garage and noticed her car was still there. At that point, panic set in, and he began calling his sisters, hoping his mother was with them, or maybe they had spoken to her, but unfortunately, they hadn't. Now everyone was in a panic, and Scott's sister Teresa rushed over to the home to help out. Together, they broke into the home and made a shocking discovery. Inside, lying on the living room floor in a pool of blood, was their mother, Lois. She had sadly been brutally beaten to death. Scott quickly called 911, and shortly after, the police arrived and began processing the crime scene. There have been very few details released about Lois's murder, but her family has stepped up to spread the word about her murder. She was an 82-year-old woman in the privacy of her home, mourning the loss of Jack, when monsters broke in and horrifically took her life. Lois left behind a beautiful legacy of strength, determination, and love. In her lifetime, Lois lived to see 4 children, 4 grandchildren, and 4 great-grandchildren be brought into this world. Her daughters, Kim, Teresa, and Gina, her only son, Jack Scott, grandchildren, Chris, Allison, Savannah, and Dylan, great-grandchildren, Audrey, Keaton, Roman, and Kendall, and 1 great-grandchild was born after her passing, Paris. I want to give a big thanks to her granddaughter, Allison Cantrell, for providing the details in the case. There's a Facebook group called Justice for Lois Rogers Adams Trent, where family and friends share details and updates about Lois's case. The group is open to the public for anyone interested in gaining justice for Lois. As of September 2024, no arrests have been made in her murder after nearly 3 years since her death. Her family, friends, and community continued to demand justice for her. Maurice Walker was born on August 24, 1974, and went by Mo. In the spring of 1993, 18-year-old Mo was living in Van Buren County, Michigan, and a student at Covert High School. He was a very talented athlete who was a member of the basketball, football, and track teams. He was also part of the school choir, jazz band, and gospel choir, and loved to fish. He had a lot going for him until a horrible tragedy occurred. On Saturday, April 17, 1993, he was supposed to travel with the track team for a weekend track meet, but he never arrived at school to get on the bus. Concerned, the coach and some of his friends ran by his house to check on him. When they arrived, Mo came outside and said he was going fishing with his brother instead at his favorite fishing spot, half a mile from his home. While this seemed strange, it wasn't a requirement for students to attend the track meets, and everyone knew how much he loved to fish. That night, around 9 p.m., he saw his girlfriend, Willena Williams, at a local store and invited her to a party that night that he planned to attend. However, to her disappointment, when she showed up, he wasn't there. The following day, Mo was found shot to death near Cedar Creek, about 1 mile from his home. It was determined that he had been dead since the night before. Investigators questioned his family, and they said that after he left to go fishing, they never saw him again. It did appear he was there fishing because his fishing rod was found nearby, but some believe he was shot to death elsewhere and then dumped in the location where he was ultimately found. While there have been many persons of interest over the years, there has never been a suspect named publicly. Mo was shot and killed on April 17, 1993, and as of September 2024, this murder remains unsolved.